A warm applause for Shushil.
Hello everyone, I'm Shushil Choudari. I think I'm not an investor, I'm just an angel investor as of now. But thanks for that introduction. I'm founder CEO of TravelX and Scandard. In 2015, I was one of the startups which was pitching, and we were #1 in India and #5 globally. And we've done decently well over the last few years, and we have now spun off a company in travel retail, where we are helping airlines and airports do more revenue from the passengers. I've invested in a couple of blockchain companies, and I'm here to talk about my experiences in Silicon Valley, and then transitioning from Silicon Valley into emerging market like India and Africa. And some of these lessons of what to take from Silicon Valley and what not to take were painful. I've learned it in the harsh way, and I would love to share those. So the topic is Unlearnings from Silicon Valley for the emerging market. I think I've spoken about my journey where I was founder CEO of Scandard, TravelX, investor in InfiniChains. I think and this talk is more for the founders who are in this batch of Seedstars, where we read so much about startups, and we adore the success from Silicon Valley startups where they raise millions and then they get acquired, and we try to follow them blindly without realizing what is the right mix. So we got to balance our learnings from the ground with what the ground realities are with the Silicon Valley. So I've split my learnings into about 5 different areas, and we'll go into them. And the first thing, is most important, is a small amount of money goes a long way in emerging market. So while for Silicon Valley company, $500,000 might not be a pre-angel round, right? But it might very well be a Series A for an emerging market. So in our case, we have raised about $2.5 million so far, and with that kind of funding, we have now 30 million installs of our app. We reached to 140 million users through our B2B platform, just with 2.5 million users. So the message to the founders is, if we raise less amount of money, does not mean you are less or more than Silicon Valley companies. You cannot compare apples to oranges. So be yourself, be original, and it will help. Scaling the product varies very differently in emerging markets versus in the market like Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, the internet penetration is different, smartphone adoption is different. People are used to more convenience than worrying about the cost a lot. So you could throw money at a problem. Once you have achieved product market fit, you could throw money at the problem and grow. There's a very short path to growth. That's not the case with emerging market. So scaling the product is very, very different. And we have seen this where the example I was giving you was people value in a market like Silicon Valley, people value convenience. They don't care about $1 or $2 that a convenience fee you're charging as a platform. Whereas in emerging markets, people care about the cost. And the thing is, everyone has a lot of time, which is not the case in Silicon Valley. So they optimize for just $1, the last $1 or $2, and they're not worried about spending half an hour extra to find that better deal. So you have to optimize for this. And these are some of these examples that we can see where the US market came up with Uber. The Asian market came up with Gojek, where all you need is a bike. If you want to go from place A to place B, you don't need to be in a car, in an air-conditioned car. You could very well be on a two-wheeler and go from point A to point B in a much faster way. So while US market came up with WeWork, there are examples where Oyo from India has started a much cheaper alternative of co-working space, and they are doing phenomenally well in the emerging market especially. And this is about the team, where, of course, we all know that team is the key factor in making a startup successful. But it is even more so important in the emerging markets because of the fragile nature of the legal framework and, basically that there are so many trust issues. So the message for the founders is basically build your team, the right skilled team, and hold them very, very dear to you, hold them very close, because that's your key differentiator, more so in the emerging markets. And in my limited experience, what I'm seeing is there is a lot of so being from the emerging market and founders from the emerging market, you don't have to think that you're working on a smaller problem or a smaller size. What is happening globally is a cross-pollination of ideas across the emerging markets and the developed markets, where emerging markets started as copy-paste models, where if e-commerce is working in US, it should work in some other market. So obviously, go fund that idea, and eventually it will become successful. So it started with that, and there was a lot of heartburn. VCs lost a lot of money, founders lost time. The startups got shut down because of all that, because they just copy-pasted a model from Silicon Valley to emerging markets. The second round was the startups, basically in the emerging markets, realized that they need to change some things. They need to tweak the model from Silicon Valley to adapt to the local market, to the necessities of local market, to the needs of local markets, like the cash on delivery we just heard about, like the insurances we heard about so far. So that was the second wave where startups from emerging markets were they innovated and they adapted. The third wave is these innovations in the emerging markets are now being adopted in developed markets. So would you believe that Bank of America, Chase from the US market are introducing utility services like what Paytm has done, or some mobile wallets in Africa or India have done, to increase engagement, to drive app installs, and to basically get a bigger share of the wallet. So these innovations which have come because of lack of money, lack of infrastructure from the emerging markets are now being copied and adopted in developed markets, which is a welcome change, which also means that the learnings that a founder has in emerging markets can very well scale to bigger markets. And now the ideas are flowing freely between emerging markets and Silicon Valley. And I think one thing we need to realize, and this is a quote from a VC in India, he said that building and I've copied it shamelessly here, building a company in the US is like running a race, like a sprint, right? Where it's a 100-meter race. All of you are standing in the same line. And you have probably 10 seconds to cross that. And it's all about, the target is known, the timer will start, and it's all about who can execute faster. Whoever executes faster wins. Whoever doesn't is second, third, or loses. Now compare that to building a startup in emerging markets. Emerging market is like a maze. It's not a sprint, where you think that you're going in that direction. When you go there, you realize it's a dead end. And on your feet, you have to adapt. You have to change the direction, pivot, and think for more options to grow or adapt or pivot. And then you go to point A to B, and then you realize B has a dead end, and you keep going till you realize what is the product market fit. And once you realize that, the good thing is there are very few players who will be in that space, so you can multiply faster, right? So that's one of the key learnings I thought were pretty interesting. I think along this, so I have worked in Silicon Valley, I've worked in emerging markets. One of the things I keep comparing is the second-hand experiences I've had with Y Combinator. And what I've seen is, if you ask a Y Combinator founder, so what is the reason for your success? And they'll tell you that it was, of course, Y Combinator's mentors and all, but they'll say that the founder ecosystem that they got with Y Combinator was amazing. They could ask, they could share. Entrepreneurship is full of ups and downs, but they could share. There was an ecosystem where these founders could share with each other, get support, and get out of the dip and start scaling again. I think, so for me, from 2015 till now, Seedstar has been that it's not a group for me, it's a family. It's a startup family which I can rely on anytime where if I have a question about legal fees, business development, some learnings in terms of scaling, I could pick up my phone and talk to any founder in my batch or even subsequent batches in probably just half an hour or so. I think of it like a big asset of everyone who's competing in my market against me. If I have this, that's a huge competitive advantage I have. So think of the Seedstars team, the mentors you are getting with Seedstars team, your peer co-founders or founders and entrepreneurs. They are your very big assets. So use them wisely. Reach out for help as many times as you want to, because one founder, one entrepreneur, one team cannot know it all. So it's all about reaching out for help and scaling from that. So it's a secret weapon. Make good use of it. So with that, I think for emerging market companies, it's not to think that you're in a smaller market or bigger. I think you grow locally, but you can start locally and grow globally. With that, I think I want to conclude, and thank you very much for your time and attention. I want to congratulate the Seedstars team for a wonderful, wonderful conference and the entrepreneurs. So join me in giving them a big round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.